12 a.m. cell doors slam shut, female inmates trapped in extreme night lockdown. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, drop your theories in the comments, because once the doors slam at midnight, there's no turning back. At exactly 12 a.m., the sound hit like thunder inside the women's wing. Steel slammed steel. One door after another. A perfect rhythm. Final. Lockdown. The hallway lights dimmed to a cold blue, and the air changed. Inside cell C-17, a woman named Lena pressed her ear to the metal and heard screaming 2 doors down, cut short, as if someone had swallowed it. The intercom crackled once, then went dead. Somewhere, a guard whispered, "Don't move," and the cameras blinked out for 3 seconds. That was when everyone knew something was wrong. Hours earlier, the prison had felt almost calm. Evening count passed without trouble. The inmates lined up, tired, quiet, waiting for night to take them. Night lockdown was strict, especially in this facility. Once the doors closed, no one left. No visits. No calls. Medical checks were limited. The rule was simple: survive until morning. Lena had learned the rules fast. She was new, transferred in after a messy trial that made the news in the United States and beyond. She kept her head down, watched patterns, listened more than she spoke. She noticed how guards changed shifts early on Tuesdays. How one camera near the showers always flickered. How some doors took longer to lock than others. Across the tier, Officer Mason finished his rounds with a knot in his stomach. He'd been warned about tonight. Nothing official, just a look from a supervisor and a note that said extra compliance. He checked the control panel. All green. Still, he hesitated before pressing the final lock. When he did, a red warning flashed. It vanished as fast as it came. At 11:58 p.m., a maintenance request logged itself in the system. No name. No reason. At 11:59, a cell door reopened for half a second and shut again. The log showed nothing. When midnight struck, the scream echoed. Lena stepped back, heart racing. She saw a shadow pass under her door, slow and deliberate. The intercom stayed silent. The lights pulsed once more. Officer Mason ran to the control room. The screen showed empty halls, perfect order. Too perfect. Then one camera caught movement where no one should be, cell C-17's lock cycling on its own. He reached for the emergency override. But the system rejected him. And when he looked up, the screen showed Lena's door unlocking. The lock on cell C-17 clicked once, a small sound that carried like a gunshot in the quiet wing. Lena froze, her breath shallow, eyes fixed on the door. It didn't open. Not fully. Just enough for the metal to loosen, to promise something worse. Then it sealed again. From the hallway, boots moved fast, then stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. In the control room, Officer Mason slammed his palm against the console. The override refused him again. A red message pulsed on the screen. Night protocol active. He had worked here for 8 years and had never seen that message. Night protocol meant no manual access. It was supposed to protect guards during riots. Tonight, there was no riot, just locked women and a system acting on its own. Mason called for backup. The radio hissed, but did not connect. He tried a landline. Dead. The only thing still working was the internal camera feed, and even that felt staged. Clean corridors. Empty stairs. No alarms. No sign of the scream. Down the tier, inmates whispered through vents, trading fear like contraband. Someone said a woman in C-19 had collapsed earlier and never got medical help. Someone else swore they saw a guard escort an inmate after lights out, something that never happened. The stories tangled together, making it hard to tell truth from panic. Lena sat on her bunk and thought about the file she'd overheard guards mention weeks ago. Internal review. Federal pressure. Keep it quiet. She hadn't known it would reach this far. She hadn't known midnight would matter. At 12:14 a.m., the lights flickered again. This time, 3 doors down opened fully. A woman named Marisol stepped into the hall, confused, barefoot. She raised her hands and called out for help. The cameras showed her clearly. Then the feed glitched. When it came back, Marisol was gone. Her door stood open, swaying. Mason's chest tightened.
He logged the time.
He logged the anomaly. The system accepted the entry like nothing was wrong. He ran to the stairwell, keycard ready, but the door refused him to. The prison had sealed itself. Inside her cell, Lena noticed a thin strip of paper sliding under her door. A message written in rushed pencil, "Stay inside." They're testing the locks. No signature. No explanation. She pressed her ear to the door again. From far away, machinery hummed, deep and steady, like the building itself was breathing. Then came a new sound, metal dragging on concrete, slow, purposeful, getting closer. The hallway lights snapped to full brightness, and every cell door on the tier unlocked at once. The sound of dozens of locks disengaging at once was chaos in metal form. Doors slid open along the tier, some smoothly, others jerking like they resisted the command. Women stepped out, blinking, whispering, clutching blankets and letters like shields. Lena stayed where she was, heart hammering. Rules kept people alive here. Breaking them got you noticed. A voice boomed from the ceiling, calm and wrong. "Remain in your cells." The words echoed after the doors had already opened. No one moved at first. Then panic spread like a spark. Someone laughed, sharp and brittle. Someone cried. Someone ran. Officer Mason reached the stairwell landing just in time to see the doors open on his monitor. His instinct screamed. This was a trap. Night protocol didn't fail, it tested. He remembered the memo he'd signed months ago, buried under routine forms. Automated compliance trial, women's wing. He'd assumed it meant drills. Not this. On the tier, Marisol's open cell yawned like a mouth. Lena stepped into the hall and felt the cold floor through thin socks. The air smelled metallic, charged. A woman near the showers whispered that guards were watching from somewhere unseen. Another swore the doors were counting them, learning. At 12:27 a.m., the cameras returned. Too many angles at once. Reds appeared over heads on the monitors, tagging inmates as they moved. Lena felt it when one dot found her. The hum deepened. The lights dimmed to blue again. She slipped into Marisol's cell. The bunk was stripped. The mattress gone. On the wall, scratched into paint, were 3 words. They needed proof. Lena swallowed. Proof of what? Footsteps approached, measured, official. A guard's silhouette crossed the hall, but the uniform was wrong. No badge. No name. The figure stopped outside Marisol's door and stood still, as if listening. Lena held her breath. The shadow moved on. In the control room, Mason finally got a line through, to a supervisor who spoke like a recording. "Stand down. The system is verifying integrity." Mason shouted that inmates were out, that someone had vanished. The line went dead. A new message appeared. Phase 2 authorized. On the tier, alarms did not sound. Instead, the doors began to close in a wave, one by one, herding women back. Some resisted and were forced by sudden barriers rising from the floor. Not hands. Not weapons. The building itself. Lena ran for her cell as her door started to slide shut. She dove inside just in time. The lock sealed. The lights went out completely. In the dark, her intercom clicked on. A different voice spoke softly, close. "Ms. Hale, your testimony is required." Her cell door began to open again. Before we dive into the chaos that would unfold that night, let's pause for a moment to understand the silent tension building inside the walls. The prison corridors were dimly lit, the fluorescent lights flickering intermittently, casting long, uneasy shadows across the cement floors. The faint echo of distant footsteps and the occasional clanging of metal bars created an unsettling rhythm, almost like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. Lieutenant Harper, a seasoned correctional officer with a sharp eye and nerves of steel, walked briskly down the main wing. She had worked at Blackridge Women's Correctional Facility for over a decade, yet nothing ever felt routine. Tonight, whispers of discontent among the inmates had reached her ears. Rumors of a secret contraband shipment, a new inmate with a violent history, and unexplained movement in the shadows. Every instinct told her something was about to go wrong. Meanwhile, in cell block C, inmate Jessica Morales sat on her bunk, staring at the locked cell door, her knuckles white as she gripped the cold metal bars. She had arrived at Blackridge only 2 weeks prior, but already sensed the undercurrent of fear running through the population. The older inmates exchanged subtle glances and whispered warnings, an unspoken code of survival in this place where trust was a rare commodity. In the warden's office, a security monitor flickered to life, displaying feeds from surveillance cameras covering every corridor. The screen showed movement in a rarely used wing, an area designated for high-risk inmates. The camera caught a shadowy figure slipping past the camera's angle, disappearing into the darkness. Harper noticed it immediately, her pulse quickening. No one should have been there at this hour. She radioed the control room, her voice steady but urgent. "We've got someone moving in the West Wing. Lock down immediately." As the lockdown sirens blared, alarms echoed through the facility, signaling the start of total confinement. Doors slammed shut, one by one, rattling the heavy steel frames and sealing the inmates inside their cells. For many, the sudden lockdown was terrifying but routine. For others, it was an opportunity. Jessica's heart pounded as she pressed herself against the wall, listening. There was a faint scuffling, barely audible, but unmistakable. Something or someone was moving with intent. Across the corridor, other inmates began murmuring, sensing the disturbance. Harper, gripping her flashlight, advanced cautiously. Each step she took echoed like a warning in the dead air. She rounded a corner and froze. On the floor, partially hidden beneath shadows, lay a small, hand-drawn map detailing the security layouts of the facility. The handwriting was crude, but the intent was clear. Someone had been planning something dangerous. Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from the far end of the wing. The sound of splintering wood and metal made Harper instinctively draw her sidearm. The camera feed from the West Wing blinked out, leaving the control room and Harper in darkness, the silence after the crash almost worse than the noise itself. And then, a chilling voice echoed from the corridor, barely a whisper, yet cutting through the tension like a knife. "They'll never stop us now." The chapter ends here, leaving the prison in chaos, the lockdown in full effect, and the true scope of the night's danger just beginning to reveal itself. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens next in Blackridge Women's Correctional Facility is something you won't believe. The echoes of the crash still reverberated through the empty corridors. Lieutenant Harper's flashlight cut through the darkness, casting a narrow beam on the walls lined with steel doors. The inmates were locked in their cells, yet the chaos wasn't contained. Something, or someone, had turned the lockdown into a nightmare. Harper's radio crackled, voices panicked. "West Wing breach. We need backup now." In cell block C, Jessica Morales' mind raced. She pressed her back against the cold wall, listening. Screams erupted down the hall, muffled yet frantic. The older inmates shouted warnings, some banging on their cell doors in terror. One woman, barely visible in the shadows, muttered, "It's not supposed to be like this. Someone's inside with us." Fear was a tangible thing, thick as the metallic smell of the prison air. Meanwhile, the intruder moved with precision, avoiding cameras and patrols, leaving small but deliberate signs of planning. Harper reached the scene of the crash. A heavy metal cart had been toppled across the corridor, blocking access to the central monitoring station. The monitors flickered, some completely dead. Harper's heart raced. Without those cameras, she was blind to the wing's activities. Suddenly, a cell door slammed violently, startling everyone nearby. Harper's flashlight caught a figure darting into the shadows. The intruder moved quickly, almost unnaturally, as if they knew every inch of the facility. Harper shouted, "Stop. Police!" But the voice echoed off the walls, swallowed by the chaos. Jessica, hiding in her cell, noticed something strange. A keycard, discarded on the floor just outside her door. She knew it didn't belong to any inmate. This was the warden's level clearance. Trembling, she picked it up. If she used it, she might gain access to areas no one else could. But could she trust the intruder? Or would following this path put her directly in danger? Back in the control room, Harper tried to regain control. Officers were scattered, some injured, some frozen in fear. The power flickered, and an emergency lockdown sequence failed to engage fully. She realized this was more than a simple disturbance. It was a coordinated effort, someone with inside knowledge trying to exploit every weakness. Suddenly, a deafening bang sounded from the roof above the West Wing. The entire building shuddered as if under attack. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling. Harper grabbed her radio, shouting, "Everyone, take cover.
Code red.
Code red." Jessica clutched the keycard, her knuckles white, as the screaming and banging intensified. Shadows moved outside her cell, and she realized with chilling clarity, the intruder wasn't just wandering. They were hunting. And then, the roof hatch exploded open, metal scraping against metal, sending a cascade of sparks down the corridor. A figure dropped silently into the chaos below, and everything froze for a heartbeat. Harper's flashlight landed on them, and her blood ran cold. The intruder, masked, precise, and terrifying, stood among the chaos, holding something glinting in their hand. The chapter ends here, the tension at its peak, leaving the question, who is this masked figure, and what is their plan inside Blackridge? Before we continue, make sure to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button, because the horrors of Blackridge are only getting darker, and you won't want to miss a second. The masked figure stood in the middle of the corridor, the glinting object in their hand reflecting the flickering lights above. Harper's heart pounded as adrenaline surged. She knew this wasn't an ordinary inmate. This person moved with precision, a predator in a place designed to contain the dangerous. Every instinct screamed that the lockdown had been compromised by someone trained, someone who knew exactly how to exploit every weakness. Jessica Morales, still clutching the keycard, realized the opportunity before her. The masked figure had created chaos. If she played her cards right, she could navigate through the shadows and perhaps escape the immediate danger. But every instinct told her to stay hidden. The slightest misstep could be fatal. Harper advanced cautiously, her flashlight cutting narrow swaths through the darkness. Each step echoed through the corridor, bouncing off steel doors, making the tension almost unbearable. She reached the toppled cart, using it for cover, and radioed her team. All units, converge on West Wing. Don't engage unless necessary. Wait for my signal. Her voice, though firm, carried the urgency of someone standing on the edge of disaster. In the cell block, whispers grew into frantic mutters. Inmates pressed themselves against the walls, some sobbing quietly, others glaring at each other with suspicion. Rumors spread. Some claimed the intruder had inside help, someone familiar with the facility's security protocols. Every passing second heightened the fear. Every shadow seemed alive. Suddenly, a deafening explosion erupted near the central corridor. Smoke billowed, obscuring vision, and alarms blared as sprinklers activated. Harper coughed, trying to navigate through the haze. The masked figure had vanished, leaving only the chaos in their wake. Officers were disoriented, some injured, and the facility's usual order had collapsed into pandemonium. Jessica seized the moment. She swiped the keycard across a locked door, praying it worked. The mechanism clicked, and the door creaked open just enough for her to slip inside. The hallway beyond was narrow, dark, and lined with steel reinforcements. Every step she took could be heard, yet she moved with calculated silence, determined not to draw attention. Back near the control room, Harper discovered the intruder had left a series of notes, crudely scribbled but chilling in intent. One phrase stood out. "Tonight, no one leaves alive." Fear gripped her, but she pushed forward, knowing that hesitation could cost lives. Then the facility shook violently. A second, larger explosion rocked the West Wing, sending debris tumbling and sparks flying. Harper and the officers stumbled, trying to regain their footing as fires started igniting along the corridor. Through the haze, Jessica paused, peering down the hall. There, emerging from the smoke, was the masked figure again, calm, deliberate, and moving closer, holding another metallic object, its purpose unmistakably deadly. The chapter ends here, the danger escalating, leaving viewers on the edge. What will happen when the masked figure confronts Harper and Jessica in the heart of Blackridge's chaos? Before we continue, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because what happens next inside Blackridge will leave you on the edge of your seat. The smoke and chaos had turned the West Wing into a war zone. Fire alarms shrieked, sprinklers drenched the corridors, and the acrid scent of burning wiring filled the air. Lieutenant Harper pressed herself against the wall, her flashlight beam shaking as she tried to keep sight of the masked figure. Every movement, every sound, made her heart race. The intruder had become almost ghost-like, disappearing and reappearing with unnerving precision. Jessica Morales froze in the dark hallway, keycard clutched tightly in her hand. She knew one wrong move could expose her to the intruder or the angry, panicked inmates around her. The older prisoners, sensing an opportunity in the chaos, began whispering plans of rebellion, some even trying to slip past their cells. Fear was everywhere, thick and suffocating. Harper reached the end of the corridor and peered around a corner. The masked figure was there, crouched near a control panel, moving with purpose. Sparks flew as they tampered with the electronics, clearly trying to disable the security system completely. Harper radioed the control room, her voice tight with urgency. "They're going for the system. Contain them now." But before backup could arrive, the intruder lunged forward, pulling something metallic from a concealed pouch. Sparks erupted as it connected with the wiring, and the entire West Wing went dark, plunging the corridor into almost total blackness. Harper's flashlight flickered, and the sound of shouting inmates echoed through the wing. Jessica realized that the keycard could be her only chance. She slipped through a side door, entering a narrow service tunnel. The metallic clang of the intruder's tools grew louder behind her, along with footsteps that were eerily precise. She could feel the danger closing in, each heartbeat a countdown. Meanwhile, Harper engaged in a tense game of cat and mouse. She moved silently, her senses razor-sharp, trying to predict the intruder's next move. The control room monitors were useless, blacked out, destroyed by the intruder's sabotage. Every step Harper took could be her last. Suddenly, a deafening crash shook the facility. The masked figure had forced open a reinforced door leading to a secure inmate wing. The heavy steel groaned under the pressure, and Harper realized with horror, some of the most dangerous inmates were now uncontained. Screams and chaos erupted as prisoners realized freedom, or at least opportunity, was within reach. Jessica, navigating the dark tunnel, froze. The footsteps behind her stopped. A metallic scrape echoed near her ear. Slowly, she turned, and the masked figure loomed in the shadows, their presence immediate, threatening, unstoppable. The chapter ends here, the tension peaking as the intruder corners Jessica, the prison in chaos, and Harper racing against time to prevent total disaster. Who will survive the night, and what is the intruder's ultimate plan? The next chapter will reveal it. Before we finish, make sure you've hit subscribe, because the final moments inside Blackridge are nothing short of shocking, and you'll want to witness every second. Jessica Morales froze in the service tunnel, her chest tight, keycard clutched in trembling hands. The masked figure stepped closer, the faint flicker of firelight reflecting off their glinting tool. Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet every path was blocked. The chaos from the West Wing roared behind her, the sounds of screaming inmates, alarms, and crumbling metal reverberating like a thunderstorm. Lieutenant Harper burst into the corridor, flashlight swinging, gun drawn. Her voice cut sharply through the darkness. "Step away from her." The intruder paused, and for a brief moment, time seemed suspended. Then, with calculated speed, they lunged toward Jessica. Harper fired, but the intruder dodged, the shot ricocheting off the wall. Sparks flew, lighting up the masked face just enough to reveal a former inmate, someone thought long gone, returning for revenge. Jessica seized her chance. She slammed the keycard into a nearby security door, yanking it open. Alarms blared in response, drawing attention, but also creating an opening. The intruder hissed in frustration, turning toward Harper, now fully aware that their plan was unraveling. The facility trembled as the intruder attempted to flee, but officers flooded the corridor, cornering them. Harper's radio crackled. Backup had arrived. The intruder tried to fight, desperate and wild, but it was over. The mask came off, revealing a face twisted by hatred, regret, and obsession. They were handcuffed, their plan thwarted, but the damage was done. Prisoners had witnessed chaos they would not forget, and the psychological impact would linger long after. Jessica, shaken but alive, finally breathed. She looked around. The fires were being extinguished, the injured tended to, the alarm silenced. The West Wing was in ruins, yet somehow, order was returning. Harper approached her, voice steady but soft. "You made it. But remember, this night changes everything." As the sun rose over Blackridge, the facility looked calm from the outside, almost peaceful. Yet inside, the echoes of fear, betrayal, and chaos lingered. The masked intruders' plot had been stopped, but the scars of the night would remain. Inmates whispered about the impossible, officers reassessed their protocols, and Jessica realized that survival sometimes came at the cost of innocence. At exactly 12 a.m., the sound of cell doors locking again reminded everyone that confinement wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The extreme lockdown, the chaos, the terror, it had left its mark on every soul inside. The story of that night would be told, retold, and studied. And as Harper walked the corridor one last time, she knew one chilling truth. In places like Blackridge, darkness could never truly be contained. Some shadows always remained, waiting for the next night. The story ends here, leaving a haunting reminder that even in the most controlled environments, human desperation and calculated evil can erupt, testing courage, trust, and survival to their limits.